We're having a celebration of life BBQ this weekend, my sister Delilah said casually over coffee at Moonbeam Café in downtown Willowbrook. You know, like a funeral, but fun. Don't worry about coming, though. It's more for people who actually knew the real you. I just smiled and said, sounds lovely. What she didn't know was that I had already inherited our grandmother's entire estate 3 days earlier, including the family lake house at Crystal Ridge where they were planning to hold my funeral. What I did next didn't just ruin their party, it destroyed everything they thought they knew about me. Let me take you back to how this nightmare began, because honestly, if someone had told me a month ago that my own family would literally throw me a funeral party while I was sitting right there alive and breathing, I would have laughed in their face. But here's the thing about toxic families. They always find new ways to surprise you with their cruelty. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when everything started falling apart. The leaves in Willowbrook were just beginning to turn that perfect shade of amber and gold, the kind of weather that makes you think good things are coming your way. I had driven over to meet Delilah at our usual spot, thinking we were just going to catch up, like normal sisters do. I'd even brought her favorite pastries from Riverside Bakery, those expensive almond croissants she loves but never wants to pay for herself. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked in. Delilah was sitting at our regular corner table, but instead of her usual warm smile, she had this weird, almost excited expression on her face, like she was about to deliver news that she thought was devastating but was secretly thrilled about. Serafina, she said, using my full name instead of Sarah like she normally did. That was red flag number one. I'm so glad you could make it. We need to talk. I slid into the booth across from her, pushing the pastry box in her direction. Of course, what's going on? You sounded mysterious on the phone. She ignored the pastries completely. That was red flag number two. Delilah never ignored free food, especially the expensive kind. Well, she said, folding her hands on the table like she was about to deliver a eulogy, the family has been talking, and we've all agreed that it's time for some closure. Closure about what? I asked, genuinely confused. That's when she dropped the bomb that would change everything between us forever. We're having a celebration of life BBQ this weekend at Grandma Rosemary's Lake House. You know, like a funeral, but more upbeat. We want to celebrate who you used to be before, she paused dramatically, before you became whoever this is. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Surely this was some kind of joke. I'm sorry, what? It's not meant to be cruel, she said, though the slight smirk on her face suggested otherwise. It's just that ever since you got that big promotion at Hartwell and Associates, you've become this completely different person. You don't have time for family anymore. You're always working. You've moved to that fancy neighborhood in Maple Heights. You drive that expensive car now. It's like the old Sarah died, and we want to honor her memory. The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. Here I was, finally successful after years of struggling, and instead of being proud of me, they wanted to hold a funeral for the version of me who was broke and available to solve all their problems. Don't worry about coming, though, she continued, twisting the knife deeper. It's more for people who actually knew the real you, before you got all corporate and distant. I felt something shift inside me in that moment. It was like a switch flipping, or maybe a door slamming shut. For 32 years, I had been the family fixer, the one everyone called when they needed money for rent, or help with their kids, or someone to listen to their problems at 2 a.m. I had sacrificed my own dreams, my own relationships, my own happiness to be available for them whenever they needed me. And now that I finally had something good in my life, something I had worked incredibly hard for, they wanted to bury it. But here's the thing, I didn't lose my mind. I didn't scream or cry or beg them to see how hurtful this was. Instead, I felt this strange, cold calm wash over me. It was like all the emotion just drained out of my body, leaving behind something sharper and more focused. I just stirred my vanilla latte and nodded, like we were discussing weekend weather plans. That sounds really meaningful for everyone, I said, my voice perfectly level. Delilah looked almost disappointed that I wasn't upset. She'd clearly been expecting tears or begging or some kind of dramatic reaction that would give her ammunition for later. You're okay with this? Of course, I said, taking a sip of my drink. I think it's actually a beautiful concept. Celebrating the past, letting go of what no longer serves you. Very therapeutic. She frowned, clearly confused by her reaction. This wasn't going according to her script. It's not personal, Sarah, she said, using that patronizing tone she'd perfected since we were kids. It's just that you've changed so much since the promotion, since you moved to that big house in Maple Heights. You're not really part of our world anymore. Our world? As if success and ambition were some kind of betrayal of my roots? I completely understand, I said, and I meant it. I understood perfectly. They didn't want me to grow. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me to stay small and struggling, so I would always be available to rescue them from their own poor decisions. Really? She asked, still looking suspicious. Really? In fact, I think you're absolutely right. The old Sarah is dead. She died the day I realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about who actually shows up for you when it matters. Delilah missed the subtle dig completely. She was too busy being relieved that I wasn't going to cause a scene. I'm so glad you understand, she said, finally reaching for one of the almond croissants. We were worried you might take it the wrong way. Not at all. When is this celebration happening exactly? This Saturday afternoon, around 2 o'clock. We figured we'd make it a whole thing. Barbecue, music, everyone sharing their favorite memories of the old you. Aunt Cordelia is making her famous potato salad. Cousin Marcus is bringing his guitar. Even great-uncle Tobias said he might come down from Pinewood Hills. The old me. Like I was some deceased relative they were fondly remembering. And you're doing this at Grandma Rosemary's lake house? Of course. That's where all the best family memories happened, where the old you belonged. I nodded thoughtfully. That does seem like the perfect place for it. What I didn't tell her was that 3 days earlier, I had received a call from Grandma Rosemary's lawyer, Mr. Nathaniel Ashworth. Our beloved grandmother had passed away quietly in her sleep the previous week, and I had been the executor of her will. The family didn't know yet because I had been handling all the arrangements privately, giving them time to grieve before dealing with the legal complexities. What they especially didn't know was what was in that will. Grandma Rosemary had left me everything. The lake house at Crystal Ridge that had been in our family for 40 years, the investment accounts that had been quietly growing for decades, the trust fund that had been providing monthly stipends to half the family, including Delilah's mortgage payments and Cousin Marcus's car insurance and Aunt Cordelia's medical bills. All of it. Every last penny. Because, as her will stated, in her own handwriting, Serafina is the only one who ever visited me without asking for money. After our coffee meeting, I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, just thinking. The old me would have been devastated. The old me would have spent the next 3 days calling family members, trying to explain myself, begging them to reconsider, maybe even showing up to their cruel little party with a fake smile and a covered dish. But as Delilah had so eloquently pointed out, the old me was dead. I drove straight from the cafe to the offices of Ashworth & Associates, the law firm that had been handling Grandma Rosemary's affairs for the past 20 years. Mr. Ashworth was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of old-fashioned manners that made you feel like you were in a classic movie. Serafina, he said, rising from behind his mahogany desk as his secretary showed me in. I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon. Is everything all right? I need to make some changes, I said, settling into the leather chair across from him. He pulled out the estate files and adjusted his reading glasses. What kind of changes? I want everyone removed from the lake house property today, and I want all trust fund distributions stopped effective immediately. Mr. Ashworth studied me carefully. He'd been practicing law for over 30 years, and I'm sure he'd seen his share of family drama. Are you certain about this, my dear? This will affect quite a few people. Your sister received $800 a month for her mortgage supplement. Your cousin Marcus gets his car payment covered. Your Aunt Cordelia relies on the medical assistance fund. I'm aware of who benefits from my grandmother's generosity, I said, but as of Saturday afternoon, they won't be benefiting from it anymore. May I ask what prompted this decision? I smiled, and I'm sure it wasn't a particularly warm expression. They're having a celebration of life party for me, a funeral, essentially, this weekend at the lake house. Because apparently the person I've become is so terrible that the old me deserves to be mourned. Mr. Ashworth's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. I see. So I thought it would be appropriate to actually give them something to mourn. Let them celebrate the death of the old Sarah, the one who paid for everything and asked for nothing in return. And let them meet the new one, the one who owns everything they've been taking for granted. This is quite dramatic, he said carefully. Mr. Ashworth, for my entire adult life, I have been the family ATM. Every crisis, every emergency, every small favor, they all came to me. When Delilah couldn't make her down payment on her house, who do you think co-signed the loan? When Marcus totaled his car and had no insurance, who covered the replacement? When Aunt Cordelia needed surgery and was short on her medical bills, who made up the difference? He was quiet, letting me continue. I have given and given and given to these people, and not once have any of them offered to help me with anything. Not when I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college. Not when I was living in that terrible studio apartment with the broken heater. Not when I was eating ramen noodles for dinner so I could send Delilah grocery money. But the moment I finally achieve some success, the moment I finally have something good in my life, they want to hold a funeral for who I used to be. That does seem rather cruel, he admitted. It is cruel, and I'm done enabling it. So yes, I want them all removed from the property immediately, and I want every financial connection between my grandmother's estate and their various needs severed completely. Mr. Ashworth made notes on his legal pad. I'll need to review the trust documents to see what our options are, but given that you're the primary beneficiary and executor, we should be able to implement most of these changes quite quickly. How quickly? The property eviction notices can be served tomorrow morning. The trust fund distributions can be stopped with a single phone call. Most of the other financial arrangements will take a few days to fully unwind, but the immediate cessation of payments can happen by end of business today. Perfect. They wanted to celebrate the death of the old me on Saturday. They'd get their wish, just not in the way they expected. There's one more thing, I said. I want to be there when they receive the eviction notices. I'm not sure that's advisable. I don't want to cause a scene. I just want to watch their faces when they realize that the old me, the one they're mourning, was the only thing standing between them and the consequences of their own choices. Mr. Ashworth was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Finally, he nodded. Very well. I'll arrange for the notices to be served at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. That should give them enough time to process the information before their event. Actually, I said, standing up and smoothing down my skirt, let's make it noon. I want them to be in the middle of setting up for my funeral when they find out that the guest of honor has some surprises of her own. As I walked out of that law office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, complete and total control over my own life. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to their cruelty or trying to fix their problems or desperately seeking their approval. I was setting the terms. The old Sarah would have been horrified by what I was about to do. She would have worried about hurting their feelings, about causing family drama, about being seen as vindictive or cruel. But like Delilah said, the old Sarah was dead, and the new one was just getting started. That evening, I sat in my beautiful living room in my house in Maple Heights, the one they resented me for affording, and made a list of everyone who would be affected by tomorrow's changes. The list was longer than I had expected. Over the years, Grandma Rosemary's trust had quietly become the financial safety net for nearly a dozen family members. Delilah, mortgage supplement, emergency fund access; Marcus, car payments, insurance coverage; Aunt Cordelia, medical bills, prescription costs; Uncle Tobias, property tax assistance for his cabin in Pinewood Hills; Cousin Evangeline, daycare costs for her twins; Cousin Bartholomew, student loan payments for his graduate degree; Great Aunt Magnolia, utility assistance for her apartment. And those were just the regular monthly payments. There had been countless one-time urgencies over the years: wedding costs, medical procedures, home repairs, legal fees, all funded by the woman they now wanted to eulogize because her success made them uncomfortable. I poured myself a glass of wine, a nice bottle of Sauvignon Blanc from my personal collection, and raised it in a toast to my empty living room. "Here's to the old Sarah," I said aloud. "May she rest in peace. And here's to the new one. May she finally live in it." Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Before I tell you what happened that Saturday, you need to understand exactly who they wanted to bury. For 15 years, I had been the invisible foundation holding up this entire family structure, and they never even noticed. It started when I was 17 and got my first job at Morrison's hardware store in downtown Willowbrook. While other teenagers were spending their paychecks on concerts and clothes, I was quietly covering Delilah's prom dress because Mom claimed we couldn't afford the $200. I didn't mind. I thought that's what big sisters did. When I graduated from Riverside Community College with my business degree, paying my own way through school while working nights at the telecommunications center, the first thing I did was help cousin Marcus buy his first car. A used Honda Civic with 150,000 miles on it, but it got him to his construction job. I co-signed the loan because his credit was non-existent. That was the pattern for the next decade. Every promotion I earned, every raise I received, every financial milestone I reached became an opportunity to lift someone else up. When I got my entry-level position at Hartwell & Associates, I celebrated by setting up what I called the Family Emergency Fund, $3,000 in a separate account that anyone could access for genuine crises. The fund was supposed to be for emergencies: car repairs, medical bills, unexpected job losses, real emergencies. Instead, it became a revolving door of urgent needs. Delilah needed money for a weekend getaway with her girlfriends. That was an emotional emergency. Marcus wanted a new guitar for his band. That was a career emergency. Aunt Cordelia decided she needed to redecorate her living room. That was a mental health emergency. I funded all of it, not because I was stupid, but because I genuinely believed that family took care of each other. I thought I was building something, a network of mutual support that would be there when I needed it too. But here's the thing about being the family ATM. People start to see you as a service rather than a person. When Delilah called, she didn't ask how I was doing or what was new in my life. She launched straight into whatever crisis required my attention and money. When Marcus visited, he didn't come to spend time with me. He came to borrow cash or have me co-sign something or fix whatever financial mess he'd created. The promotion they resented so much, it came after I single-handedly landed the Meridian Industries account, working 18-hour days for 3 months straight. While I was building presentations and flying to Chicago for client meetings, Delilah was using the emergency fund to renovate her kitchen. While I was earning the recognition that would change my career, Aunt Cordelia was getting her diabetes medications paid for by Grandma Rosemary's Trust, a fund that I had personally convinced my grandmother to establish after Aunt Cordelia's diagnosis. The house in Maple Heights they mocked, I bought it with money I had saved for 10 years, living in that cramped studio apartment above Rossini's Pizza, eating cereal for dinner so I could send grocery money to whoever needed it that month. When I finally bought something nice for myself, they acted like I had betrayed some sacred family code. But to them, my success was selfishness. My happiness was a crime against the natural order. The fact that I finally had a life that didn't revolve around their constant crises made me the villain in their story. So yes, they wanted to have a funeral for the old me, the broke me, the available me, the me who would drop everything to solve their problems and ask for nothing in return. Perfect, let them bury her. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, one of those perfect autumn days that makes Crystal Ridge look like something out of a magazine. I woke up early in my beautiful house in Maple Heights, made myself a proper breakfast, blueberry pancakes, fresh coffee, the works, and took my time getting dressed. I chose a black dress and pearl earrings, seemed appropriate for a funeral. At exactly noon, I drove to the lake house.
I parked across Lakeshore Drive, behind a cluster of ancient oak trees where I could observe everything while remaining hidden. What I saw unfolding before me was so surreal it felt like watching a twisted movie. They had transformed Grandma Rosemary's beautiful wraparound porch into some kind of macabre celebration. Black balloons bobbed in the autumn breeze, streamers in funeral colors draped the railings. Someone had set up a large poster board with photos of me from throughout my life, childhood pictures, college graduation, family gatherings from happier times, all labeled with a banner reading, "In loving memory of the real Serafina, 1991 to 2024. The audacity took my breath away. They had created an actual memorial display for a living person because that person's success made them uncomfortable. Delilah was directing the setup like some twisted party planner, wearing a black dress that I recognized as one I'd bought her for a job interview 2 years ago. Aunt Cordelia was arranging covered dishes on the outdoor table, including her famous potato salad in a serving bowl that had been a Christmas gift from me. Cousin Marcus sat on the porch steps, tuning his guitar, the expensive Martin acoustic I'd helped him buy when his band was about to make it big. Great Uncle Tobias had driven down from Pinewood Hills and was already helping himself to beer from a cooler, decorated with a handmade sign reading, "Celebrating Sarah's Past Life." There were about 15 people total, mostly extended family and a few family friends. All of them laughing and chatting as if this was a normal, healthy way to spend a Saturday afternoon. As if holding a mock funeral for someone who had financially supported half of them was perfectly reasonable behavior. I watched through my binoculars as they shared memories of the old me. Evangeline was telling a story about how I used to babysit her twins for free whenever she needed a break. Marcus was reminiscing about the time I drove 6 hours to help him move apartments, using my car and paying for the gas. Aunt Cordelia was fondly recalling how I always remembered everyone's birthdays and never showed up empty-handed. They were mourning my generosity while benefiting from it. They were celebrating my past helpfulness while punishing my present success. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. At 12:15, Mr. Ashworth's process server arrived right on schedule. Patricia Williams, the process server, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of professional demeanor that commanded respect. She walked up the gravel driveway carrying an official briefcase, her expression neutral but purposeful. "Excuse me," she called out to the group on the porch. "I'm looking for Delilah Hartwell, Marcus Goldsmith, Cordelia Blackwood, and Tobias Blackwood."
The panic was setting in now as the reality of their situation became clear. I could see them doing the mental math, calculating just how much of their comfortable lifestyle had been subsidized by money they'd never earned. "You're destroying this family," Delilah said, tears of rage streaming down her face. "No," I replied, standing up and smoothing down my black dress. "I'm just stopping paying for it, and apparently that's the same thing." I walked over to their memorial display and began taking it down, piece by piece. Photos, banner, testimonials, all of it went into the trash bag I'd brought from my car. "The old Sarah really is dead," I continued, dismantling their shrine to my former doormat self. "She died the moment she realized she deserved better than being an ATM with feelings. So congratulations, your funeral was a success. You just didn't realize you were burying yourselves along with her." That was 6 months ago, and let me tell you what happened to each and every one of them. Delilah, who screamed the loudest about family loyalty, was the first to discover what life costs when you actually have to pay for it yourself. Without the $800 monthly mortgage supplement from the trust fund, she couldn't afford her house payments. She lasted 3 months before the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings. She's now renting a 1-bedroom apartment in the old part of Willowbrook, working double shifts at a call center and weekends at a retail store. She sent me exactly 1 text message after she moved. "I hope destroying your family was worth it." I replied, "My real family would have celebrated my success instead of holding a funeral for it." Then I blocked her number. Marcus had to sell his beloved truck and buy a 15-year-old Honda Civic. Without the trust fund covering his car insurance and maintenance, he couldn't afford the payments on his oversized vehicle.
The irony? He's actually become a better musician since he's had to work for his living. Desperation breeds creativity, apparently. He's been playing coffee shops and farmers markets, slowly building an actual fan base instead of just dreaming about fame while someone else paid his bills. Aunt Cordelia discovered that generic medications work just as well as brand names, and that most pharmaceutical companies offer assistance programs for low-income patients. Her doctor helped her apply for programs she'd never bothered researching when someone else was footing the bill. She also got a part-time job at the library, something she should have done years ago instead of living off trust fund payments. Uncle Tobias, to his credit, handled the transition with the most grace. He sold his cabin in Pinewood Hills that he couldn't afford without property tax assistance and moved to a smaller place within his actual retirement income. He was the only one who sent me a letter of apology, brief, dignified, acknowledging that they had treated me poorly and wishing me well in my new life. Cousin Evangelica had to put her twins in regular daycare instead of the expensive Montessori school the trust fund had been subsidizing. She got a full-time job for the first time in 8 years. Her kids are fine, by the way. Turns out children are remarkably adaptable when their parents actually parent them instead of outsourcing everything. As for me, I kept the lake house and had it completely renovated. It's now my weekend retreat, a place of peace and beauty where I host friends who actually value my company rather than my bank account. Real friends, people I've met through work, through my hiking group, through the photography class I finally had time to take. I've started dating again, something I never had time for when I was constantly managing family crises. I'm seeing a wonderful man named David, who's a veterinarian in the next town over. He has no idea how much money I have, and he doesn't care. He likes me for my terrible jokes and my enthusiasm for terrible movies and the way I sing off-key in the car. I travel now. Last month, I went to Ireland by myself and hiked the cliffs of Moher. I'm planning a trip to New Zealand for Christmas. I read books, I tend my garden, I volunteer at the animal shelter, I live. The old Sarah really is dead, just like they wanted. She died that Saturday afternoon when she finally understood that she deserved relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. The new Sarah has built a life filled with genuine connections, personal fulfillment, and the kind of peace that comes from surrounding yourself with people who love you for who you are, not what you can do for them. They wanted to bury me. Instead, they buried themselves. And you know what? I don't feel guilty about it anymore, not even a little bit. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone's refusal to grow up. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give people is the opportunity to learn that actions have consequences. They taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about respect, support, and genuine affection. They taught me that success isn't something to apologize for, it's something to celebrate. Most importantly, they taught me that the only approval I need is my own. So thank you, Delilah. Thank you, Marcus and Cordelia and Tobias and all the rest. Thank you for showing me exactly who you were when you thought it was safe to do so. Thank you for giving me the clarity to become exactly who I was meant to be. The funeral was lovely. I hope you enjoyed it, because it really was the end of an era, just not the one you thought you were burying.